Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes, I'm so excited to see you. This has got to be for me one of the most fun evenings I've had in quite a while, which feels kind of sad to say, other than the fact that you're all changing the world in such incredible ways. So I'm very glad to be here. My name is Tanya Woods. I am the founder of Project in Kind, a global movement dedicated to empowering changemakers everywhere. And with me, I have three incredible leaders tonight who are doing all kinds of work, from governance to re-envisioning social structures and hierarchies, to others that are innovating with a whole host of innovators around the world to add new innovation in blockchain to supply chains and you can imagine everything in between. So I'd like to first introduce everybody on the call and the conference with me now. First, I have Alexia Hefty. Alexia, can you just wave so everybody knows who you are? There she is. Alexia is the CEO of eGovern, based in the United Arab Emirates. eGovern offers government comprehensive digital transformation and regulatory technology solutions. RegTech is the way the cool kids say it. Alexia sits on the board of the government of Bermuda's FinTech advisory team and Women Entrepreneurs Global. She is passionate about the transformation and governance models in emerging markets. And then I also have with me the lovely Lucia Gallardo. Lucia, can you please wave? There you are. She is the CEO of Emerge, an innovation studio focused on powering public-private innovation with exponential technologies. Lucia sits on the board of Women Entrepreneurs Global, Unity, Penta Network, and the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance. Lucia cares deeply about technological justice and enabling more equitable governance models as well. And then I have Sukhvir. Sukhvir is our champion. Sukhvir, can you wave? You're the last lovely face on our deck that people don't know, but I just want to make sure they really know who you are, because you are an entrepreneur and inventor from Toronto, Canada, building very, very cool technology, which I got to play with earlier today, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with everybody with you. You're focused on new governance, economic, and social systems with blockchain technology. Previously, you specialized in creating mission-critical projects for NASA, Langley, Polymath, TD Securities, LedgerX, and 500 startups. Basically a genius from an engineering perspective. And now he leads the development of Social.network, the world's first social network to unlock the true potential of decentralized governance and finance. Wowzers. I just feel like I can pack it up now and let y'all just go. But after all of that, can you please just share with everybody what kind of favorite project is that you're working on right now, and what it's all about? So I'm going to just pass this one first over to Alexia, and then we'll go Lucia and Sukhvir. How about that?
Sounds good.
Thanks, Tanya. It's great to be here this evening. Sorry, we're one of the last panels, so I'm sure you're all tired. But you know, as Tanya mentioned, eGovern focuses on digitizing e-government services. And while we can't speak about any of the projects that we're working on right now, I will say, as you've seen what's been happening going on in the United States with voting, you may get a glimpse of what it is that we do. So with voting and all the claims of voter fraud, claims of dead people submitting ballots, and all kinds of nonsense, you start to ask yourselves, what kind of system are we relying on, and who are we relying on for the truth and transparency of that data? And these are some of the issues that we like to work with governments on solving, and we can do that with blockchain. So that's some of the work that we're doing. In addition, as well, we've been focused on how we can look at sharing data between government agencies as well as across international borders. And I think that's what we're really excited to explore at eGovern and what we're doing in several regions around the world.
Amazing. Lucia, how about over there?
Hi, it's really, really great to be here. I'm very excited about this discussion. As Tanya and Alexia know, Emerge is a socio-technology consulting and development studio. We focus on powering public-private innovation with exponential technologies like blockchain, but not only blockchain. Some of our projects include traceability solutions that are focused on building farmer well-being. We've done projects in digital identification with a particular focus on displaced population, be it homeless or economic migrants or refugees. We've done projects in rainforest conservation with indigenous communities, health services triage, and transparency and civic participation. So a lot around governance consideration, a lot of governance considerations in the different types of projects that we do. So really excited to have this discussion today.
Awesome. Sukfer, over to you.
Cool. So I'm the founder of Social. It's a decentralized social networking platform that's governed by its token holders and tied to an economic system that not only doesn't rely on ads, but it has the potential to create a better world for all life on Earth.
So,
and
why?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you actually, because I know you've been in the impact space for a very long time, and you know more about it than anyone else. So why don't you tell us what you've been working on?
Oh, it's very kind. So I stumbled into blockchain quite a number of years ago because I was really frustrated with philanthropy and the concepts of social impact and all of the very hierarchical old world approaches to both topics. And they were exclusive. And I thought, that's silly. We have peer-to-peer technology that doesn't need to be exclusive. In fact, what if we just recognize the value in everybody's, hands, heads, homes, hearts, today and really realized human capital and then catalyzed it. And so I started Kind Village, which is a technology platform that enables in-kind donations to move around the world and basically decentralize global aid in a very cool way. And then also launched Project In Kind, which is a global movement empowering philanthropists and change makers. And it's the world's first in-kind movement dedicated to enabling the donations of skills, services, and goods. We'll hopefully achieve 1 billion of those donations by 2030 in support of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So we're a little bit ambitious, but I know, the four of us together can totally pull this off. So I'm going to recruit each of you to help me and equally invite everybody who's chiming in to recruit with us toward our projects and please learn more. So thanks for asking, Sukfer. I really appreciate the question.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess let's jump into it. So we're talking about governance, and what would you say, Alexia, is the difference between decentralized and centralized governance, and what are the benefits of decentralization?
So I think when we're looking at centralized governance, particularly in government software, we're really focused on some keywords, top-down centralization, hierarchical structures, lack of efficiency, oftentimes corruption and regulatory capture. And on the flip side, decentralization, at least where you govern, is about increasing political efficacy and as well as equality and transparency, and those principles are really critical in moving away from more centralized structures of governance to decentralized forms of governance. And I'm not talking about moving to extremes, of course, because decentralized governance can go to quite extreme models that techno-libertarians and crypto-anarchists would believe in as well. But yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about that, though? Because I feel like there's been this incredible push in the industry to sort of digitize governance, right? We see a lot of projects that are taking current forms of like popular or majority-based vote or, turning that into potential control of computing power rather than control of a voter ballot or something like that. And then trying to take these like current notions that we have about power dynamics and then turning them into these like digitized systems. And the result is unfortunately that we are rebuilding a lot of the same systems and same government styles and decision-making processes that we currently have in the tangible world. And I think that that's a potential safety hazard in terms of the future and the viability of these systems that we're trying to build. I think there needs to be a lot more room for rethinking the way that governance sort of takes place and also setting precedent for being a lot more aware of how those that are governed are participating in this process, because even as we sort of use this mass discussion around how blockchain is an enabler of inclusion, we are building technology that requires nearly 24/7 connection to really participate at the same rate as someone else that does have it, and that's just not the reality for a lot of people in the world, right? So I think when we are thinking about the future of governance and we're correlating that to a brighter future, I think there's a lot of considerations and actually a lot of things that we've been doing not so great across the industry.
I really like those points that you raised, Lucia. I mean, I think now is the time to stock take. I mean, I wish we would have been stock taking probably about a decade and a half ago, in truth, but we just don't have honest feedback loops, and data really does give us the opportunity for honest feedback loops. Blockchain technology gives us the opportunity for honest and transparent and trusted feedback loops. And this is a point where I think we really do need to be architecting honestly our future and thinking through all of the places where bias sneaks in and where power dynamics impose themselves. Sukhvir, we were talking for everybody listening. I mean, I like all these people, so I've really enjoyed the many opportunities I've had to talk with them, especially in the last few weeks. But we were talking earlier about, just different power dynamics and what the decentralization could be about, in what you're doing at social. And like, I mean, we almost don't need government at all. And for a lot of people, that's very, very scary. And I'm just curious, this is, we have some questions we're set to answer for this, but I'm curious, what's up with that? I mean, what are you thinking about? What are you anticipating as a response to social? Because I have a guess of what I might anticipate, but what are you thinking about? Because you are redefining a lot there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Lucia was saying. We have an entirely new design space that has never existed before with blockchain, where we can codify laws and codify incentive structures. And instead of replicating the existing system that was built 200 years ago, for example, like the governance systems that govern the majority of our world were based off of papers written in the 1700s. They are called the Federalist Papers. And we're still using a lot of those assumptions. It assumes, for example, that their election will identify wise, far-sighted individuals who will prioritize decisions that achieve above all else just those things, like for the good of the people. You can look at what's happening in our world, and I think that, it's hard to say is what's happening. So, yeah, I think we need to just completely look at the fundamental reasons why we create governance structures and align it better with the technology that we have. So that's kind of why we went to the base of what the Constitution was written on, and then we scrapped out a few pieces and we implemented blockchain technology to better meet the needs of our time.
I'm curious, Alexia, where you fall in this, because I don't know that I would say that it would be necessary to even say that government shouldn't or doesn't have a role to play, because I do think, nothing that is happening philosophically is new. We've been talking about the balance between decentralization and centralization for many, many, many years now. One of my favorite books was written in the 1800s, and it is an evaluation of the ways in which decentralized power was supposed to harmonize with centralized authority. And I think, we are now looking at a technological or systems-based approach to something that is a very dated notion. And so I think that is inherently that goal, right, is to strive toward this harmony of where authority plays a role, how that authority is held accountable, and where that visibility is in terms of the transparency of how they're elected, of how they make decisions, of how they use resources and dispense resources, and then making sure that all of that is sort of powered through this decentralized approach of participation. And I'm curious to hear about Alexia's thoughts, because obviously this is something she's dealing with a little bit more directly.
Thanks, Lucia. I think it's actually really interesting what you mentioned, because I'm working with governments right now, and so obviously, what you mentioned, Tanya, with Sukhvir's network, maybe challenging whether we even need government. Obviously, governments don't want to hear that. So what I found interesting and what we're seeing is governments maybe going in an in-between state that actually does solve some of the problems and challenges that we're facing globally. So I'll give you an example. 2 billion people in the world are underbanked or unbanked. And, that's a massive challenge. We have most, people living in emerging markets that are completely left out of the global economy. That is a problem. Now, the problem is that banks, one of the problems contributing to this is de-risking. And de-risking is where banks choose to eliminate a banking relationship with a correspondent bank with individuals and organizations because it poses too much of a risk to bank them. And so they choose to avoid it altogether. Now, the problem again is then you end up with people who are unbanked and underbanked. So if we look at a concrete example, you look at the government of Bermuda. The government of Bermuda has stated that it is building a Bermudan national digital bank. Its focus will be to bank the unbanked and underbanked, among other things. Now, in banking the unbanked and underbanked, we're talking about industries as well that may be underbanked, like fintech, gaming. So countries that would like to focus on these very cutting edge, opportunities, industries can't, because then they get cut off. So in this particular instance, what's interesting as well is Bermuda has said, look, instead of us just trying to build a national bank, let's have every single Bermudian be a part of that. Mm-hmm. Let's have them buy into it. And I think that's really interesting. So you've got Bermudians actually owning equity in a national bank, or they will be if this passes. And that's kind of, a stepping stone to perhaps increase decentralization in governance. So that's one example. But I think governments will always be, in the route of they would like government to continue. But it's nice to see and work with governments that are thinking a little bit outside the box and thinking about how we can bring decentralization into their very centralized organizations.
So I agree with that, and I have tremendous respect for governments. They're amazing. The people who work there, you're serving people, but you have to wake up to the reality of the world that we are living in right now and realize that, those people who rule countries are also being manipulated by the same algorithms and the same social media that every single person on this planet is being governed by. They are redundant now at this point. They can try to fight the technology, but they're not going to win. And if we don't build technology to solve this problem, we don't stand a chance. So basically, we have to look at what Uber did. Uber showed us how, maybe we don't need to, have these medallions and centralized entities governing taxi companies. Maybe you can just tap a button on your phone and do the same thing like 10 times more efficiently. And I think that's what blockchain allows us to do, is we can implement the same structures. And like exactly what you're saying, that example of decentralizing the bank and giving the people the power to control where the allocation of global tax dollars go, we can do that right now. The technology is there. We just have people who are blocking it and not letting us do it. And really, we need to move the ball faster than.
But then Uber went and plowed through regulatory environments and tried to force its way in through to different cities. And that's not even taking into account their performance internationally, where it was literally little consideration for the ways in which other parts of the world are governed and want to be governed. And also, they got kicked out of China, but they got kicked out of the Middle East by a competitor that was operating in 4 countries and still managed to beat them out. And the only way Uber could return to the Middle East was by acquiring them for $3 billion, $4 billion? I can't even remember the exit. It was amazing. So I think this is a perfect example of saying, what is it in theory and what is it in practice? And in theory, it's great that we build these technological solutions to govern, but in practicality, we really need to understand the ways in which technology systems need to be, adopted, how they need to be implemented in ways that are a lot different in the realms of implementation and in the realms of considering the diverse technological literacy, what consent means when you're asking people to buy into a system that is going to govern them and that is controlled by whom. Because, if we look at some of the coins out there today, there's concentration of power even within what is supposedly a decentralized currency, right? So I think, there's a lot to say in relation to what we want to say about decentralized governance, but what is really manifesting in front of us and what these sort of warning signs that we're starting to make obvious. And what I think I'm here to do on this panel today is to sort of say, hey, we're making a couple of mistakes that we've made in the past before. We're trying to digitize certain things, and in the process, we are making the same mistakes. And I think Uber is a perfect epitome of those mistakes, actually.
I completely agree. I think Silicon Valley is, the blockchain community really has a chance to set itself apart from, the VC-backed model. And unfortunately, a lot of these ICOs and projects that come out, they just kind of latch on. We're also replicating the Silicon Valley model in terms of just getting as much capital as possible and not really thinking about, okay, what is the purpose of what we're doing? What are we actually trying to build here? If Bitcoin goes to $100,000, society collapses and everybody else, the reserve currency falls apart and your friends and family are starving. Congrats. Who cares?
I want to pick this up for a minute though, because I think this is great. I've been appreciating quietly just letting you all go, but let's talk about this. Who cares? And I think this is the part where we do need to stock take. Like capitalism has driven us to be very focused on bottom line profits, profit seeking, maximizing profits, de-risking to maximize profits, shareholder returns, profits, profits, profits. I'm very okay with profits, but at what cost? And where is our value system today? Who's stating what our values are as a society, as sub communities, as micro communities? Who's doing this? I can tell you, watching COVID, it's a joke. Nobody's doing this. The governments don't have the answers. They don't know what to do. Their systems that have been siloed and apart and so clean and organized are long outdated. They have to become with capacities. They need capacities to work across silos, and they don't know how. And interdisciplinary thinking is just hard to find. So who's defining our values? And when we look at government, I mean, we've been in systems around the world, and it's certainly not the case everywhere in the world. But when we look around the world, our systems, we defer. We've deferred to whether it's big business, deferred to mafia, militias, or we've deferred to government, but we've deferred our power as human beings. So if we're really going to do something as a grouping of living, breathing species on the planet that have a little bit more competency than, other kinds of animals, what is it that we're going to do, and how are we going to articulate that value system? That's
Not
what I want to
elephants,
understand. Now,
not
elephants know more than we do. They know more than we do. They just can't handle the mobile phone
I trust you.
like
I
we
trust
can.
Lucy. She's way more eloquent.
Yeah, but I want to understand this, because we talk about democratizing finance, we talk about democratizing systems, we talk about the great hope of blockchain and crypto. I appreciate all of it, but there's algorithmic bias built into a lot of the systems. I don't care that it's blockchain. The algorithmic bias is built in. So how are we going to do this? Lucia, go for it.
Realistically speaking, like the notion that a decentralized system could potentially open up that opportunity, but the problem is also in the way that we design things. Like, when I hear the words digital wallet for financial inclusion, I almost want to punch the person that said that, because if you are building a digital wallet for financial inclusion and the person that is using it is downloading this digital wallet into their smartphone and has the technological literacy to use it, and is acquiring different types of currencies on it, then, let me help you out here. They're already financially included.
Yeah.
So I think this notion that there's a gap between, what we are saying, what we're trying to achieve, what in essence would be a very participative form of governance if we were able to really put our systems in the hands of people to more actively tell us what it is that they value, what it is that they care about, what it is that they want to decide upon, where consent and access sort of meet. And I think, we haven't been able to do that successfully as an industry. And I think we're so locked in building technology of the future. And yet, if you look at the context, we're in the middle of a global pandemic that is worsening statistics on technological access, that is worsening statistics on poverty and inequality, that is worsening the ways in which people will be able to access this technology with natural disasters that are literally removing technological infrastructure. And so I think there's a lot to say in which, there's a feel-good sentiment to saying a brighter future. There's a feel-good sentiment to saying impact. But the reality is actually, this is a very core component of understanding the ways in which the systems that we are trying to build and the goals that we as an industry have been sort of trying to push through decentralized participation and governance, they are manifested and made real through an impact philosophy that allows you to really build these considerations in for other people that don't have a smartphone that they can download their digital wallet into.
Crazy idea. And I mean, Alexia, I want to know what you think about this, because the truth of the matter is, I mean, look, all of us have a very privileged position to be even on this, panel this evening through the work that we've been doing. I think we've got to recognize our privilege and do something useful with it. And that's certainly my modus operandi. And I know for a fact each of you has a very similar goal amongst your other objectives. But Alexia, when you're talking to governments, the reality is they're not all equal. I know for Bermuda, for example, I've had lovely conversations with many ambassadors for STEM in Bermuda, and they need more support. They need government support. So how are you engaging with governments to help them? Because I'm certainly not a no government kind of person. I see a great role for the institutions we do have How are you helping them navigate some of this?
That's a really interesting question, because that's definitely one, hurdle we find in our work, is that, you've got the governments that are much more sophisticated in their knowledge and understanding, not just of blockchain, we're just talking about anything in technology, and then some that aren't. And then also certain ones that are facing a lot of different challenges that others aren't. For example, climate change among small, island developing states. And so, one program that we're working on right now is developing curricula as it relates to government, that will be targeted to government agencies in a specific region, to help them understand, one, the basics of the technology, how we can use it towards governance, and then start thinking about, well, how can we use this to solve regional problems? So, even, basic government services, we're talking about a driver's licensing registration system. I know, not so exciting on this panel, but, you have maybe, 10 small governments that are trying to develop their own system, and they don't necessarily work. They're very expensive. How can we start thinking about using, a blockchain-based system that's regionally and that allows for a little bit of integration? Now, driver's licensing, not so interesting, but then we start talking about trade, and then we start talking about, well, how can we use this, to build bigger ties with, between African nations and the Caribbean, or whatever it is. And, it starts to become very interesting. But again, one problem I think is pervasive in all of this, is that we're doing work government by government, or multilateral finance institution, large international organization. We are not thinking about things globally. That is a problem. Water is a global problem. Climate change is a global problem. Yet we're faced, with having to deal with voting in this guy or this woman who will hopefully, in this tiny nation help us. But realistically, in the grand scheme of things, we need to all be tackling this problem. And unfortunately, because of the way that our, society is built, we can't do that right now. And we need, and perhaps blockchain is a solution to that, but it isn't right now. And that's where I would love to see the technology.
Now, you can create a society on social.network, and
that's exactly it. That's it. Put the plug. And it took me less than 10 minutes. It took me less than 10 minutes. Okay, I've got to ask you the final question. And like, this is what happened when we did our 30-second planning on the weekend. It lasted almost 2.5 hours. So come find us again if you want us to bend your ear. Final question. What will the future look like by 2021 Futurist Conference? So everybody's got 10 seconds. Sukbir, you're first.
Okay, it's probably longer, but the future, it's a series of stepping stones. If we want to live in a world where humanity coexists with life on Earth, where we're not domesticated by technology, we need to make some changes. And social.network is the first stepping stone towards that brighter future. I think you can sign up today on alpha.social.network, spread the message, and let's build the future.
Okay, my answer is projectinkind.org. Lucia?
Well, I'm just gonna go with it's a year, right? So
it's a year. Project.org, social.network.
Bitcoin is still doing well, and hopefully we see more adoption. But I think what I really want to see is something like close to what Alexia is describing in terms of more collaboration on really pushing the ways in which public and private innovation and multiple forms of public innovation can also sort of start considering the technology, and that we, as an industry, as a blockchain industry, really look toward what those implementation contexts are and how we can better design a full-fledged experience for what we're trying to innovate on. And that translates into more value for people, and more harmony between what is supposed to be the role of government, the role of private sector, balanced out with the public good and the sense of decentralization and sovereignty in terms of consent, access, data, etc.
Awesome. Alexia?
2021, that's not very far away, but I guess for eGovern, that looks like hopefully bringing together a couple of countries to work towards one of the objectives that I mentioned previously. And again, not to solve the problem, but to get them to the table, because that's a very small step, but it's a lot of work.
For a year.
This is excellent. Yeah. Well, it's excellent because we're gonna pass our government friends over to Alexia. We're going to pass everybody else over to Lucia. We're going to get them all to go over to social.network, and everybody's going to give some in kind because I got 1 billion to reach. So I think we've got at least a decent plan in place here. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to hang out with us this evening, and especially, again, to hang out with me. I just think the world of what you're all working on, and there's more of us needed in the world. Certainly, we're not the only ones. So let's keep on going, and let's see in a year where we're at. It'll be fun to come back and report. So thank you very much, and I hope everyone has a great evening.
Thank you.